Indiana Jones, Indiana. It's a podcast about Indiana Jones. Every movie, 1 minute at a time. Indiana Jones, Indiana Jones Minute.
Welcome back to the Indiana Jones Minute, the podcast where we get to the heart of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom 1 minute at a time. I'm Pete Mummert.
I'm Tom Taylor.
I'm Gerald Christopher Myocardial Porter.
And today we are welcoming back J.W. Rinzler. You know him from the complete making of Indiana Jones and the making of Star Wars, and you will soon know him from his new novel, All Up. Welcome back to the program, Jonathan.
Thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure.
It's always fun having you on here. And today we're talking about Minute 88. Minute 88 begins with Indy putting Shorty's Giant's cap back on and Shorty handing Indy his fedora. And it ends with some Ewok-style mayhem as slave children pour baskets of rocks onto thuggy guards' heads. And I love, we get such a beautiful like little rendition of the Raiders March here as Indy puts Shorty's Giant's cap back on him. And this begins, I think, maybe one of the most viscerally satisfying sequences in any film I've ever seen. Like just this next couple of minutes coming up is just every time it gets me every single time.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and the just even the very Indy Shorty moment is awesome.
Yeah.
It's There's nothing smarmy about it. It's heartfelt and it's legitimate, and I'm totally with it.
Yeah, it starts pulling the heartstrings, and then at the end, you stand up and you're pumping your fist like those guys across the chasm.
Right. But you know why you're doing it, even if they don't.
Yeah. It is interesting though because Indy, like when he puts Shorty's hat on, he kind of caresses his face, and there's a lot of that happens in this movie. And I think it's interesting because Mola Ram touches Larry's face like that before the sacrifice. And evil Indy touches Willie's face like that, and Willie touches Indy's face like that. And now we have Indy touching Shorty's face like that. It's interesting, the progression of the face caress.
What? And Shorty says, "Indy, my friend."
Yeah.
So he's forgotten all about the elephant.
Well, he doesn't say his best friend.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got a lot of friends.
He's moving up the ladder, but he's not at
Let's be clear. He doesn't have a lot of friends.
That's true. Yeah. He's got at least two.
He's an incredibly forgiving kid, though. Like, he just had Indy had that cannon backhand against his face, and he's immediately forgiven him, which I love about Short Round. He's got the purest heart. He's the bravest guy in the movie. I mean, I still say he's, for me, the hero of the movie, and I just love how giant this kid's heart is, and he forgives Indy, and it's a beautiful scene.
Yeah. But it's all confused and weird because I have no idea what Willie's doing in the background. Jared scared the socks off me yesterday with that Willie scarecrow, but now she's actually there, and I don't know what she's doing.
I don't either, but I'm just thankful. Well, you know what she's doing? It's bro time. It's bro time. So she's letting them have the minute, you know?
But it's like she's doing something to the point where they had to stick a scarecrow of her in there yesterday in the last, seconds ago in the movie. And she's like, it looks like she's kneeling over like a dead guy or something. Or?
Yeah, it looks like she's praying or something. Maybe she's putting aloe vera on all the burns, from the lava.
Oh, she's an angel.
It is strange, but I'll tell you this, Tom, I'm just glad it's her.
Yeah, no, it's a human being. Yeah, with a face and like form and everything.
It's all good.
No, I embrace it.
Just be thankful for those things.
Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe she's supposed to be sort of recovering over there, or maybe just Spielberg wanted her in the shot so that when she gets up, she could just walk right into frame.
Yeah, maybe.
So it is odd, though. As I watched it 5 or 6 times, I thought, "What? Yeah, it's odd. What is she doing there?"
She's holding the slack lever for the.
Oh,
winch.
is that what that is?
Yeah, she's sitting there holding on to it.
She wants to make sure that Indy and Shorty don't get pummeled by it by accident.
Oh my, you're right. She is. She's trying to make sure no one else gets some sort of heart trauma.
But like I said before, I mean, Indy's reunion with Short Round is a lot more touching than his reunion with Willie. The seconds before.
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like, yeah, we got to do this mushy stuff, but the kids who are watching this, they are, Indiana Jones is their surrogate father. So this is where it's almost like Spielberg knows that's the relationship that's in a way more important to the movie-going audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
That's, we've talked a lot about this actually, because sometimes Short Round is like Indy's sidekick, sort of like the Robin, and then there's other times where Indy is paternal towards him, and I don't know. Do you think do you prefer one over the other, or do you think they both work?
In terms of the relationship?
Yeah, in terms of the relationship. I mean, like we're introduced to him. He's driving the getaway car while everybody's shooting at them. It's not exactly the situation you'd invite your child to.
Well, it's funny. I think it works really well. I think it's one of the most positive things about the movie is their relationship, and the actor is great, and he is a surrogate for 8-year-olds to 12-year-olds or whoever watching the movie, or anybody who wants to have a heroic dad like Indiana Jones. Which, just as a sidebar, I'd like to say how ridiculous it is that Han Solo and Princess Leia could have the most evil son in the galaxy. that just doesn't make any sense at all. I'm sorry, not a single shred of sense. But because if Han Solo was your dad, he'd be like Indiana Jones. Of course, he would be a great dad. He might be hard to deal with sometimes, but he'd take you on adventures, man. You'd have total filial love for this great father.
Yeah. Well, can I say right now, I agree with you completely in theory, and I agree with you in regards to this movie. But I feel like one of the things they kind of went off the rails with in Crystal Skull was with Mutt. And it's interesting because in this scene, you have this really touching father-son moment with the hats. And I think they were trying to recreate that in the wedding scene in Crystal Skull. And I feel like that sort of fell flat.
Well, what happened with that is that you had a real life situation where you had Harrison Ford looking at Shia LaBeouf going, yeah, maybe you're taking over, but I don't think so. You notice that he's not in Indy, whatever it is, 5.
Yeah.
And and I mean, that's for probably a lot of different reasons, but I know for a fact that there was Harrison Ford was ambivalent about the whole idea of giving it up and having his son sort of be the person who's going to take over in real life playing Indiana Jones. So and he's older, and as we all know, teenagers are a little bit different from 10-year-olds or whatever, however old round.
Yeah, totally.
It's a different stage in your relationship. You want to replace the dad. Short Round's not interested in replacing Indy.
Right.
He just wants to be loved.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great point.
That would be hard to follow in his footsteps. Literally, as a kid, everywhere you go, it'd be, oh, your dad, the eminent archaeologist, and I don't know. There'd be a lot of pressure.
I wonder if Crystal Skull had featured Shorty instead of Mutt. If audiences would be more open to that or something. If Shorty just took over the Mutt role and was that age, and they sort of teased the idea of Shorty taking over. I wonder if people would be like, all right, yeah, Shorty, here you go.
Right, he could have been his adopted son or something.
Yeah.
That would have been. Yeah, I mean, he put his time in. I mean, for real. I mean, he's the guy who's pulling the whip. The guy who gets hanged by the ceiling fan. He's at Short Round's the guy who has to clean up that mess.
Right. I don't have my Indiana Jones guide with me, but there must be tales of Short Round in the expanded universe of Indy, but I don't know I can't remember what they are.
I think he shows up in comic books and things.
Yeah, he shows up later, and he goes on a hunt for the diamond that they lose at the beginning to Lao Che, I think.
That's right. I think that's true. Yeah, I think that's right. But you guys mentioned how when the Ewok sort of attack at the end where they jump the rocks on those guys. Can you explain to me the two guards who come in look like they fall before anything hits them? Is that my imagination? Am I missing something because I'm watching it on a small screen?
I don't think that's your imagination.
Well, it's like we've got a scene coming up in a few minutes where Pat Roach throws a hammer into the air and it hits a guy in the head, and you can see him flinch before it hits him. So, but it's a great, like, the transition to that, I think, is one of my favorite lines in these movies, is when Willie says, they have Indy and Shorty have their moment with the hats, and then Willie says, Indy, now let's get out of here. And then Indy puts on the hat and he says, right, all of us.
Right.
Well, that's not exactly what he says. He says, all of us. He's got that crazy out of nowhere lisp again for that line. It's so, I've seen this movie hundreds of thousands of times, and until Jer pointed it out with, like, when he's zombified and chanting in the Temple of Doom, he's got a weird lisp for like one word or something, and then here, full on close up, this very important line, all of us. Like his whole mouth goes to the side a little bit. It's insane.
I noticed that too, but I didn't want to poke a hole in my own theory about how the Kali blood, the Khalid, makes you lisp.
He's probably got a fat lip from Pat Roach punching him.
Sure.
Fair enough. Enough.
Or he did just have his mouth smashed together to pour the Kali blood in.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is.
His tongue's dislocated.
His tongue's dislocated.
But I love the shot right after that. One of my favorites, where the mine car. That's why I asked you guys for this minute, because of that mine car coming up with the light. And what I like about it, I mean, it's just so heroic and it's so corny, but it works for me.
Yeah.
But what I like about Indiana Jones, though, in that shot, he doesn't look that big.
Right.
He's not like overflowing with muscles like some heroes. He just looks really cool.
Yeah.
He's there with purpose.
Yeah.
Resolve. Yeah.
A great pose.
You mentioned the mine cart. It's funny that they. It strikes me as weird that they cut to that mine cart and you see it coming forward, and that explains why the light goes up on him in that sort of hero shot. But I feel like if they hadn't have shown that, you would have just accepted, like, oh, this is the hero shot, and his face is illuminated from something, like it's a movie, and the lights are coming up on him, and we're all standing up in our seats and cheering and stuff. But it's cool. It's weird and cool that they cut to that mine cart and explain where that light is coming from.
Yeah.
And then those two punches are like cannons.
Oh yeah.
And those guys fly. Like, I love how those guys fly all the way across the floor.
Well, I think there's a little thing. You hear two punches, but we don't hear that Indy actually puts Vaseline all over the guard's back. So when he lands on the ground, I mean, he literally slides like 20 feet.
Yeah.
And if you watch it, there's clearly something else going on there. Like, maybe it's a Temple of Doom. We all think it's fiery. I don't know. Maybe that little part of the Temple of Doom is ice, like black ice.
Maybe.
But when they're pushing the car up, I don't know if it's the shot before that, there's sparks. I love it. There are these sparks going off in the background.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So who knows what they got going on with that ground there? I mean, you could do anything.
Thank you, Jonathan, for
You can light matches off of it.
You know what I love is at second 40, we see whip meet whip. Like, you literally see, like,
right.
for the first time, you see, like, the Temple of Doom guard whip, and then you see Indy, and, he's got his whip, his bull whip by his side, and I'm just thinking, like, God, I would love to see a lightsaber duel with bull whips. And I wondered, was that even a discussion? I wonder if they ever thought about that, because there's so many whips in this movie, even, bad guys have whips all day long.
Yeah. We've seen him used for evil in this movie, like countless times, much more than we've seen Indy's whip being used. So yeah, it's kind of, it seems like almost like a missed opportunity that they didn't, take the evil whips and face off with the Indy whip.
A no-brainer, yeah. If the Pat Roach character maybe maybe he was a bullwhip specialist like Indy, and I don't know.
Well, you guys have watched these movies a lot more than me, but it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, after Raiders, Indy uses his whip for transportation mostly.
Yeah. Even mostly in Raiders, yeah.
Yeah.
There are very few times where he uses it as a weapon.
It's also a kissing aid later in this movie.
Right.
Yeah, it's sort of a form of flirtation.
Yeah. This scene, as it was originally written, I mean, this is such a emotionally and viscerally satisfying scene, but the original script, this played out unbelievably differently. When Indy and Shorty and Willie get into the cave here, like into the mines from after they've just left the temple, in the original script, there's a guard passing and Indy calls out to him from a cave and he says, sir, excuse me. And the guard turns and he's amazed to see Indy looking at him from the mouth of the tunnel. And Indy says, listen, I'm from the Union and I'd like to talk about the working conditions here. Could you step inside for a minute?
Oh my God.
And the guard steps into the tunnel and that's when Indy punches him. And then they come, like the guard comes flying out and then they come out and save the kids.
Oh, it's crazy.
Wow.
That's very, can you give us a hand with this?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think when, like we said before, you're doing different versions, and as you do the different versions, hopefully what happens is you get to the essence of what you want to do, which is Indy punching this guy in the face.
Yeah.
In a heroic way.
Yeah.
Very hard. And just saving the kids. I mean, it's great. It's one of those Spielbergian themes, which are starting here, which is I'm saving all these poor kid slaves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's really interesting that they choose not to show that. The punches, the double sock.
Yeah. I think it's just like, a cinematic thing. You hear it and then you see the guy go flying.
It also does. It's hard to imagine him punching someone that fast twice in a row and see him fly like how. Where was the first punch? If you punch him, yeah.
Right. By not showing the punches, you can accept the fact that it was a really good punch that flew about 20 feet.
Yeah.
It's like when the $6 Million Man runs in slow motion. It seems like he's going crazy fast.
Right.
Accept it better.
Right.
I agree with you, Pete, though. I like how you said it. It's satisfying.
Yeah, and there are a lot of decisions that they made with things they didn't end up filming, and part of that was probably Harrison Ford's back that I think would have made the movie stronger, but this is one thing that I think they made it a lot better the way they decided to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
One thing is funny, again, it's one of those cinema things where once the idea is that Indy's freeing them, the kids all sort of become a lot more energetic, a lot happier.
Yeah.
They all lose, it's like they all woke up from naps. They have a lot of energy. And it works. It's cinema. It's like, it's dream logic is what it is. It's the same thing you see in Enter the Dragon when Bruce Lee, when the people and all the people in the underground prison are in prison, they're really depressed and horrible looking. And once they're let out and they can go fight people, they're 20 years younger and they are experts at kung fu. It's just dream logic. And and Indy is a great vehicle for that. It's all about
totally.
Yeah, it's so much about the tropes of cinema, which Spielberg knows about 1 million times better than most people.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Jonathan, talking about it's like they awake from a dream. Do you think that everybody in the Temple of Doom has drunken the Kali blood, and everybody that we see, like all the children, are under a spell?
Well, let's see. I mean, something like that. Yeah, I think there's, even if it's not physical, they've probably been. I mean, certainly. I mean, not liquid ingestion. They've been. The idea is they've been beaten and psychologically put down. But I was referring more to the fact that the way cinema works is that it's just a dream logic. If you're having a dream and somebody gets out of prison, it doesn't matter who they were when they were in prison. As soon as they're out of prison, they're reborn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you see that almost literally with these kids when they come pouring out of the palace in a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Into the sunlight. And it's in a weird way, again, this is a side, but it reminds me of Episode 1. I have a lot of Star Wars frame of reference where Anakin, thinks that Qui-Gon Jinn might be coming to free all the children, and he says, "Well, actually, I'm not doing that.
Right.
I'm not here to free. I'm not here to free slaves.
Yeah.
And it's much more real world politic. I'm just here. I'm protecting this princess. That's my job." And the whole movie, in a sense, spirals. He should have freed all the children if he, from a certain point of view. And in this movie, 20 years before, or 15, whatever it is, Indy does free all the children, and it's great. I love that at part of this film.
That's interesting. I never made that connection before, but that's fascinating.
Yeah. Qui-Gon had not bigger, but different fish to fry or something.
Yeah.
He couldn't be bothered to even save the kid's mom, which is a little frustrating. But okay.
Right, exactly. It's like, why you can't take you guys can't have room on Coruscant for one more. Well, no, but it's not, but the thing is, he's dealing with the real economic situation. I mean, it'd be interesting to have somebody able to write their PhD thesis about it, because you can amplify it.
Uh-huh.
You can amplify
Yeah.
it. But I remember I asked George, when I interviewed George for the book, the Indiana Jones book, I tried to sort of make a case for there being more to the indie films psychologically. And George just wasn't having any of it. He was like, no, don't even try. He said, yeah, Star Wars is like an onion. You can peel it back and peel it back. And he said, I deliberately put a lot of stuff in there, and there's many multiple layers. So he says, Indiana Jones is what you see is what you get.
Yeah. They both seem to have that feeling about it. I remember there was one interview with Steven Spielberg, and they were just like asking him. It might have been Barbara Walters or somebody. She was asking for just a kind of gut reaction to each of his movies. And when she got to Raiders of the Lost Ark, he paused for a second. He's like, "I only directed Raiders of the Lost Ark." Like he didn't have like a personal connection to it at all or something. Not that he didn't like it or anything, just that he was like it was sort of like George's idea, and he just directed it, and he loves it. And I think that's why he likes it. That it's like, oh, it's like this movie I get to watch over and over again, and I don't have like I don't have the deep connection to it that I do to other things I've created, so I can just sort of enjoy it. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I buy that. Like, you know, if somebody creates something and says, no, it's just a thing. It's just a bunch of stuff that happened. Don't worry about it. That's valid from the author's point of view. But then if the audience, like us dummies on this podcast, spending, hours and hours and hours talking about the movie, we can, we'll find an onion and peel it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that I'm in the same boat as you guys, and I agree. If you once the artist, whatever it is, movie, book, poem, whatever, lets it out into the world, if the world finds stuff in it that the artist wasn't conscious of or didn't intend, it doesn't. If it's there, it's there, and it's
Right.
and it's
Right.
valid.
Yeah.
Completely valid.
And I think the onion analogy is apt, because in this case, I think sometimes the more you dig into the onion, the more the tears start to come too.
That's true.
Well, and the more your breath stinks.
But it's funny what you said about Spielberg, because it does. I think Spielberg was, relative to most of his other projects, he was a kind of gun for hire for Raiders and Temple. And I think the one that's probably the most personal is Last Crusade. But
Sure.
I recently came across in my notes, and I'm going to put it on my website in the next couple of weeks, is Spielberg's, whatever it was, conference with some of the ILM guys when they were trying to figure out how they were going to do the ending of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And it just kind of got lost and stuff, and I just happened to find it, and I have to just take a look at it, make sure it makes sense. But in a couple of weeks, I'll put it on my website. So just
Oh, my God. That's cool.
very cool.
Yeah, it would be great.
I don't know. I'll tweet it when it goes up or something.
Yeah.
But the point being that you can see that the ILM guys were kind of in the driver's seat, because they knew what they could do and what they couldn't do. And so they said, well, what if we did this and what if we did that? And of course, Spielberg and Lucas are saying, well, that'll work, that won't work. But the ILM guys were incredibly creative and key, pretty aggressive in terms of what effects could do at the time.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
But I think, well, you guys will get there when you do Last Crusade. But I think that one was more personal because it has the father thing, which is one of the Spielberg trope.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe one day you guys can ask him.
Someday.
Yeah, that would be nice. You said they're nice. You said they're nice fellows.
Yeah.
So we have another scene here that they actually filmed that didn't make it into the movie. And when they originally filmed this, after Indy kind of has this hero shot, and then they bring the kids back out of the Temple of Doom, and they bring them back out of the mines through the Temple of Doom, and they lay a big wooden board across that lava chasm.
Oh my
And
God.
all the kids run across the board, and after the last kid runs across, the lava finally burns through the board, and Indy and Shorty and Willie are still stuck on the stage side.
Oh my
and so then
gosh.
they have to come back into the mines, and that's where the rest of the action that we see happens.
Oh, wow.
Oh, does that mean you can't get into the temple except? Wait, what does that mean? Like, how
I'm
did
not sure. I'm not
Wow,
sure.
boy, that's
Do
weird.
you think maybe that's part of Mola Ram's problem? Maybe who's just born back there
He doesn't know anything
like in
else.
that altar, and he doesn't. Yeah, he's never gotten out of that little altar place because there's that whole lava chasm thing. I mean, that would mess with your head.
Sure.
But how does Indy get back there? Remind me, how does he get from? Because when they go there, they're on the thuggy side.
And Indy
Yeah.
uses his whip, and he whips the elephant trunk and swings over the lava.
Oh, okay,
Right.
right.
Yeah. And so then,
Okay.
and then there's a scene coming up in the next minute or two where there are a bunch of kids running out of the mines, and you see Shorty running with them. And I think that's them running to go to save everybody across
okay.
the lava chasm.
Yeah.
We've been wondering like where the entrance to this is, and I think originally, and there's still photographs from this I can post of the lava bridge and like the kids running across, but it seems to indicate that the only entrance to the temple is through somewhere in the palace, because then the kids run through there and they kind of run out of what we thought was the kitchen.
Yeah, that would make sense. It also shows how incredibly, again, how the large group of zealots just were really brain dead, because it didn't occur to any of them to put down the board.
Yeah, really.
Across the other way.
That collate is potent stuff.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah, I've forgotten about that scene where they're all running through the temple. I mean, not the temple, the palace.
Oh yeah, they kick over the stuff on the table and yeah. But it's interesting because kids run out of different doors, so I wonder. And I don't remember if you see girls running across that board in the shots. So I'm curious if maybe there is another way out. So it does sort of have that same dream logic you were talking about.
Yeah, I used to, when I used to teach, we used to show medieval painting, and the students would get very upset because it was so fake looking, Byzantine style. And I said, look, the movies that you think are real looking, obey as many cultural idiosyncratic tendencies as the stuff 800 years ago. They accept that as real for whatever reasons. There's all kinds of things that we accept as real watching these movies that people 100 years from now are just going to go, what is going on?
Yeah. Or I'm curious if you showed someone like in the Byzantine Empire that was some of these movies, and they saw like if they would even understand, they'd be able to follow the action because they don't know these same tropes we know.
Right. I mean, editing in itself is a whole language that we all understand intuitively, that not necessarily going to be self-evident, to once the technology changes and they stop making movies, a lot of it might become pretty hard to watch. But just all the weird stuff though, like that when she slaps him and it sounds like a car door shutting. I mean, people are going to go, what is wrong with these people who made this movie?
Like the Middle Ages, they have no depth perception.
Yeah, were they all stupid? No, it's just that's the way. That's just the way it was.
Does anybody have anything else about minute 88?
Oh yes. Wait a minute. This just in, coming over the wire from Professor
Oh my God.
Christy Porter. Manliest hat exchange ever.
Yeah, she's not wrong.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that one. She's had some good ones lately.
Yep.
Do people know you guys are talking about this stuff and send you text or something?
Well, Professor Christy Porter is actually my sister.
Oh,
We've
okay.
had her on as a guest a number of times. She's like adjunct faculty on the Indiana Jones Minute. So
see,
she comes in.
I
She
see.
always has at the end of every minute. She her thoughts come over the wire.
I was naive.
This is another one of those tropes that people will not understand in a few years.
Exactly.
Actually, I was going to wonder, what are these noises they're making? What the heck
Yeah,
is
what?
that?
Right,
Using
right.
telegraphs in
Right.
2017. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I thought he said the guy was his sister.
Yeah.
What the hell's going on?
Yeah, there's weird things that we think are normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I have nothing else to say about this. I have this minute. You guys have covered it. I think.
Alrighty.
I think we all have.
Well, Jonathan, you do have a lot of great things to say about a lot of other stuff, and I highly recommend your complete making of Indiana Jones and your making of Star Wars, and you've got your new book coming out, All Up. And can you tell people where they can find you and where they can see what you've got going on and what you've got coming out?
Sure. People can go to my website, jwrinzler.com, which pretty much, sums up whatever is going on at the time. Or they can follow me on Twitter at jwrinzler, or find me on Facebook and ask me a question if they have any.
Definitely. And we've got links. We'll have links to those things up on our website and on our Facebook page as well. So definitely check out Jonathan, and you can come back and check us out again tomorrow for minute 89 of the Indiana Jones Minute.